Happy Mercury Day, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Star Watch, which is a weekly astrological transit report for Wednesday, October 12th. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Jane. I'm super happy to have everybody here. So when we look at the skies this week, we don't have massive events going on, like we don't have any major transitions or transits right now. I just think that we are in this limbo week here, which can feel great because it doesn't feel like we have this sense of urgency to hurry up or get something done. We can just sort of go through it at a more natural pace. And we don't have to deal with overly or excessive emotions, with the exceptions of maybe Friday when Mars comes into that conjunction with Mars. But even that being in Gemini, I don't know that that's going to be a hugely emotional day. I just think that there is going to be an extra little push forward, but for the most part, we can just sort of live our lives normally this week without having to pay attention to some massive celestial event, okay? So this week, we start off with the Sun and Venus. Now, Venus is sort of gaining on the Sun right now. Venus is gaining speed. Around the 22nd, 23rd, when Venus and the Sun prepare to come into Scorpio, they will be in that exact conjunction. And then we'll have Saturn going direct on the same day. That's October 23rd. Not quite this week. We'll talk more about it next week, but that's kind of what we're building up to. Now, Mercury is also officially in Libra as well, and still in shadow, but I think he's in over here, he's scoring at a 0, which I actually like 0 for Libra energy because 0, of course, is the exact center of all the numbers, right? Everything circulates around 0. And so to be at that middle point, to be neither here nor there is actually really good because when you make decisions right now, there's not a lot of fear or a lot of negative emotion, and there's maybe not even that much excitement either. It's just sort of neutral, and you can just say, all right, well, this is just something that needs to be done, and you just do it. You say the words, you take the action, you make the phone call, you send the email, you pay the money, like whatever it is, you just do it, and there's not a lot of being worked up about it, right? It's just something that needs to be done, plain and simple. I do think the skies are really advocating for a more stoic approach to things. Now that full moon, right, late last week, on specifically October 8th, when Pluto was stationed direct, I think October 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, you may have really felt a heaviness. That was Pluto. And then like we were building up to that full moon on the 9th, which was conjunct Chiron, which also could have been heavily emotional, especially the couple days before as the moon was coming through Pisces, coming in conjunction with Neptune. Like that may have been a very disruptive week last week, but we're not there right now. That moon is officially waning and it is building up to an eclipse on the 25th, but right now it's just kind of in a relaxed position or in a relaxed direction, rather, with the exception of Friday when it comes into a conjunction with Mars, but that will be a very fleeting, just a specific chunk of period of time in the day, and then that's it. It's not going to be like a whole multiple day period. So we can move forward more intelligently and more consciously, and we can exert our will a little bit right now, right? We can say, this is what I will to be done, and we can execute upon that will and those desires. And it doesn't have to be this huge, draining, massively expressive experience, right? It's just something that we do. It's more simple. So one thing I do like about Libra is there is a simplicity about it. It can be very straightforward. It is cardinal, so it does like to make things happen. So it's great. Now, a couple notable things. Well, actually, let me fast forward the clock just a couple days so I can show you. So here is this conjunction. Now, this conjunction is kind of interesting because it's in a square with Neptune. The moon is going to be coming in contact with Saturn. It's going to be coming in contact with Venus and the sun. And these are trining aspects. So as much as there could be like a moment of maybe there is a more aggressive something that happens, whether you communicate more aggressively or you say something a little bit more abruptly than you normally would, or you feel an emotion surface really fast, or someone triggers you. That may or may not happen. But if it does, it is actually really productive. There's something you can do about it, I mean, right? So it's not just like you're going to have a feeling arise and then all of a sudden your whole life is kind of taking a whole new direction. No, it's like a feeling arises and you can logically think through it and logically take action accordingly because it's so well supported. It's a very grounded and kind of supremely linked with these trines. We love trines. They're somewhat Jupiterian in nature, so there's a benefit and an easy flow with this. So maybe you have to express your emotion about something, and that could come off very well, right? Because sometimes when we express our emotions, people don't always take it so well, but I think they will, most likely, at this point. I can't help but really understand, because with Mercury in Libra, we have all now the capacity to weigh other people's sides. We can weigh our perspective against their perspective, and we're able to find some kind of equal ground. So that's across the board. So that could end up being really positive ultimately. But I did want to talk about the fact that Mars is in a square with Neptune, and on this day, there may be a little bit of tiredness that comes as well. Now, technically, Mars is coming off of that square degree, the exact, right? 23 degrees, 53 minutes versus 23 degrees, 17 minutes. Now, it's just barely, it's still technically the 23rd degree. And Mars is still moving into the 24th and 25th degree before he goes retrograde. But technically, it is kind of a waning energy. So he's not building up to Neptune, which I felt was a lot more aggressive. Also, since it happened when Pluto was going direct and the moon was coming through this area of the chart right here. So that was a pretty aggressive buildup with Mars coming into that square with Neptune. But now it's sort of kind of coming off of it. But if you are still needing rest, like we are coming into that period of the year where, yes, it is getting dark really early. We're going to have daylight savings coming up here in the next few weeks. Well, at least here are we even doing that anymore? I feel like they voted to not do that anymore. But you get the idea, right? We're moving into that period of the year where, like, it's getting darker. We need more sleep. We need to check out a little bit earlier in the day. We maybe can't go full on as many hours as we used to back in June and July when it was, still light at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m., right? So you take the rest that you need, and you may have a few reminders of that with this particular square. Mars slowing down, and also Saturn slowing way, way, way down. If I go back to today, the 12th, I just want you to know that between the 12th and the 23rd, which is the day that Saturn stations direct, he will only be moving 5 minutes, right? So 18 degrees, 40 minutes, and then he goes retrograde 18 degrees, 35 minutes. So that's like, he's basically not moving in the sky at all, okay? So, I don't know, he's giving us that opportunity to really be sure about some stuff. And as we're making our way into eclipses, we do need to be very sure about stuff. Now, I don't know that eclipse season is going to be the best time to launch these big things and to make these big choices and these big decisions and get into huge contractual agreements. I really don't think that's a good idea. But when it comes to creating things by way of allowing things to fall apart, okay, because Scorpio is highly destructive, that will probably be a good thing to a degree if you know what you're doing and you know what you're able to handle. And I think Saturn is really going to support that because he only goes direct a couple of days before that new moon eclipse in Scorpio. And so he's giving us an opportunity here this week and next week as the moon continues to wane to truly prioritize what's really important. And to say, okay, like, especially if you have choices, because oftentimes in Libra season, we can feel really torn between two important priorities, right? Sometimes it's also common for Libra to like be in love with two different people, like equally in love, and be like, how am I ever going to choose? Like, I really love both, or I really want both jobs, or I really want, like, even in my case, I have two major home projects that need to get done. I'm like, but I can only afford to do one. So I'm like, I can only do one, but which one is more important? And sometimes that can be a very difficult thing to decide. And so Saturn is here saying, let me give you some time to feel your way through this properly and appropriately so you feel comfortable and confident with your decision once you decide to pull the trigger. So you don't have all of this self-doubt that's going to come after you choose one thing over the other. All right, so he is doing us some favors right now by giving us a moment to take a beat. And maybe this week, that's the best advice I can give you, is just take a beat. All right, take a minute, take a breath, do a meditation, go for a walk, disconnect, turn off your phones, whatever it is you need to do, and allow yourself to reassess your life, to reassess what is actually the most important. And while you may not execute it on it right away, I still think because I think the eclipses, as much as we say, like, hold off on doing things, the energy wants you to do things because it's heightened. And there is, whether we like it or not, there's an alignment, right? Sun, Earth, Moon. There is an alignment happening when eclipses are there. So we, to a degree, are somewhat aligned. Our inner world, our moon, and our impermanent experience here on Earth is aligning with a more celestial purpose. And so we do want to do things during this time, especially when Uranus is going to be involved on November 8th when we have the big full moon eclipse. So it's hard to like hold ourselves back because we're aligned. We want to. We want to pull the trigger. We want to initiate. We want to make all these great things happen, you know? And so because of that, there is a little counterintuitive stuff going on, people saying, don't do anything, but then your soul is like, yeah, but I want to, you know, and it feels good, and I feel energized, and I feel inspired, and I feel excited about it. And now Saturn is here, like, well, just be sure, right? Don't get lost in your excitement. Don't get lost in the hyperactivity. Don't get lost in the enthusiasm, and don't think that that's the only thing that it's going to take to make it successful. Just because you're enthusiastic doesn't mean it's going to really work out super great, right? And the enthusiasm is fantastic. We love that. And that usually is what gets us up off the couch to go do something. But Saturn says, think it through. Strategize it a little bit better, plan it, budget it, structure it, right? Do these things first so that when you do execute, you have a stable foundation. And we're going to need that stable foundation that we're kind of needing to establish now, because when he moves into Pisces in March, it's going to be a little bit slippery, all right? So we're going to need to have some kind of grip under our feet so we can like stand up on something. I think a lot of things are going to come crumbling down for a lot of people. It'll be interesting to see what happens politically with that transit. I honestly think 23 and 2024 are going to be the weirdest, strangest, most confusing years in American politics that we have ever seen. This is also a global transit, so probably every country is going to go through some weird political governmental thing. And because of that, there could be a lot of economic turmoil, which means we as individuals need to have some grip underneath our feet. Otherwise, we will we'll kind of be slipping all over the place and not really have anything to grab onto. So having an idea of your purpose, having an idea of your vision, having some good financial structure and financial stability and financial strategy in your life, all a good plan, all a good idea, and doing things haphazardly. Neither Saturn nor Mars is really advocating for that right now, in spite of potentially some of the enthusiasm that will arise throughout eclipse season. And the desire to make change and reform in our life. And while that's great, and it will be great, reform is absolutely necessary, but we want to make sure that what we are reforming into, or what we're building as a means of reform, is actually going to work, right? So we want to be intelligent about it. We want to be slightly cautious, but not debilitated. We want to be slightly cautious, and we want to be not making mistakes that other people have already made, right? So we want to do it right the first time if we can. So that's kind of what's building up for us now. Again, like I say, it's not the most eventful week. I think the biggest things is just Saturn and Mars are moving really slow, and we have Mars in a square with Neptune, and that's pretty much the bulk of what's going on. Next week, we'll have certainly a lot more to talk about, as we are making our way officially into Scorpio season at that point. And then therefore, Saturn is moving, eclipses are coming online, Mars is going to start going retrograde and whatnot. So there's going to be a lot more to talk about it next week. Okay? All right, you guys, I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you so much. You guys know I love you. Have an amazing week, and I'll talk to you soon.